Hey everybody, I don't know who all is going to jump on this live today. I didn't announce it as widely, but I just wanted to do another update video. My last update video, I talked about the fact that things were opening up here where I live in San Antonio, Texas, and that I would give you guys an update about a week later of how things are going here. It's been interesting. When I posted my last video, I was a little like on the fence of what we should do about opening up. I still am kind of on the fence of that, and I'll go in that in a minute. But we opened up, the state of Texas opened up in various phases, and they opened up restaurants to 25% capacity. They also opened up some non essential businesses such as retail to go, and then even some swimming pools and museums and the state parks. But this week, I guess there was a second phase of opening. We now have like hair salons, nail salons, those things that are kind of opening up here. So it also, I'm seeing a lot of opening up. Hey, reviews with Sue. Opening up or laxity of things in healthcare as well. So we're now doing elective surgeries. My particular hospital is about 75% capacity of what they previously had been doing with surgeries. So we ramped up pretty quickly. They're also allowing visitors now into our hospital, which has been a huge shift. For the past 2 months, we haven't allowed visitors into the emergency room or the hospital at all. And so it's been definitely different. So, having seen these sick patients, having seen the toll it takes on people and everything, and knowing how bad this is, it's weird seeing everything just open up suddenly. And on one hand, I understand where it's coming from and why we need to do it. Our economy is crashing. People do need to get back to work. But on the other hand, as a healthcare provider, it's weird and startling to me that people just act like this pandemic is over, and it's not over. So the problem is when we originally did these guidelines of lockdown, the idea was to just not overwhelm the hospitals. We never really got overwhelmed. In fact, our volumes really went down in most areas outside of like New York and a few other places. So that was part of the push along with the economy to open everything back up. Now, our volumes are almost back to normal, and our patients are sicker because people put off coming into the emergency room. And so I'm seeing pathology and folks that put off things that they should not have put off. And it's definitely straining our staff. Hospitals furloughed a lot of their staff, including their ER staff, during all of this. And so we're still not up to peak staffing still, yet our volumes are near up to our normal, and our volume of sick patients is a lot higher. And so it's been interesting. Yeah. Now, when it comes to a COVID volume of patients, at least here in Texas and San Antonio, at least in San Antonio, we're not seeing a huge uptick right now, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to have a second wave of cases. So what that means is we did a really good job of flattening the curve here in San Antonio. I think I last looked, and our latest count of new patients was like 18 for the city, which is really good, and no new deaths in the last, I think, day or 2 days. So we are up to just shy of 2,000 cases here in San Antonio. We're just shy of 60 deaths. Oh, thank you, Pam Coco. Yeah, I do feel refreshed. I had a pretty good day today, and I'll go into that in a second. But our numbers aren't bad. That being said, we went from completely having good social isolation, people being pretty locked down, to suddenly now most things are open. And I can tell you from when I did this last video to today, the roads are so much busier. Restaurants, specifically on the outskirts of San Antonio, not so much inside San Antonio when I was driving around, but the outskirts are pretty busy. Like I saw lots of cars in the parking lot, lots of people in there. I'm hearing stories that social distancing in restaurants is not always the best. And this may come to the fact that not every restaurant is opening up, which is, it's restaurant to restaurant. Not every business is opening up. And so people are stir crazy, and I think getting out in force. And that may be creating a little less of social distancing. The other thing that I am noticing is people are definitely not wearing masks correctly. And I'm seeing a big push on social media, which is really frustrating, that people feel like wearing masks is some sort of government intervention into your life. And I would like to have people reframe that. If you frame it from the standpoint of it's a socially responsible thing to do, this is not the government forcing, because really, what is the government going to do to us? They're not, police officers aren't arresting people who aren't wearing masks. Stores may or may not stop people from coming in. They're definitely not kicking people out of stores not wearing masks. I've seen that myself, where people walk around without masks. But if you think of it as a socially responsible activity, meaning you are doing this not because you're fearful of getting the disease, but because you may be an asymptomatic carrier and you care for your fellow human being, and you're doing a good thing to your fellow human being by wearing that mask properly, so that you don't spread it to them, who then they could spread it to their grandmother, their immunocompromised family member, or whoever. If everybody thought of it that way instead of taking it and making it political, it would be a huge thing. And that's been very frustrating. Hold on one second. What's up, Alice? Okay, go ahead and use it. Sorry, my daughter is supposed to be in bed, but she had to go use the restroom. But yeah, if everyone thinks of it as a socially responsible thing and stops trying to make it political, which it's very frustrating me that this is political at all, I think it would be better. You know, we have to open up things. We cannot stay in lockdown forever. I think all of us agree on that. The timing of it is where people disagree. And I think we've met the goals generally of what we were expecting for the lockdown. And some people would debate that. Some people want to stay locked down forever because somehow the goal shifted from flattening the curve, which doesn't decrease the overall amount of cases we have. It just decreases how high they peak and how quickly. But some people saw how effective that was, and they want to stay in lockdown until there's a vaccine. Unfortunately, that vaccine is really far away, so we don't know when it's going to happen. So that's not realistic. So then it comes with, okay, when we open up, we're going to have a second wave of disease. And when should we open? And I'll be of the mindset, like, a part of me doesn't want to have this big rush of patients in the second wave, but a part of me wants to get it over with now. And the reason I say that is we are in the summer months. If you're going to have a rush on the hospitals, another second wave of disease, of a flu-like illness, the best time to have it is actually in the summertime. Schools are already out. Your hospital's capacity are much higher able to handle it, because you don't have as many sick folks in there with flu-like illness. If you hear the bathroom flushing, that is my daughter. So if I'm going to have to go through a second wave, I think the summertime makes way more sense. And I think that is a better time to have it. So on one hand, I'm really, really nervous about all this. But on the other hand, I think it's almost like pulling off a Band-Aid. We just need to go ahead and go there and see how this rolls out. So yeah, it's weird. Though it's very weird right now. I do encourage everybody to keep wearing your face mask appropriately. That means over your nose, over your mouth, not pulling it down when you're in a public setting. This is mostly important when you're in a enclosed space, stores, those kind of places where you cannot distance from people at least 6 feet. If you're out in nature doing your thing away from people, you don't need a mask. If you're with your loved ones that you live with all the time, you don't need a mask. Do I think we should be going out in big parties with people? Probably not. We're not there yet. Do I think some people who have been quarantining really well can go and maybe sit on their patio with their family member and have a little bit of time? Yes. Yes. In fact, I did that today. I went, and for the first time since March, I went to my parents' house, and we stayed 6 to 8 feet away while we celebrated our birthdays. And it's my mom and my birthday today, so we celebrated it's socially distance away, and the kids played in the backyard away from everybody. And that's okay. And I encourage people to connect and see their family either on FaceTime or a acceptably social distance away, because I think those connections are very important for our mental health. I didn't have a lot of questions in my last video, but I did have a few, and the one that I wanted to touch on specifically is we were talking about antibody testing and testing in general. Where I'm at, my testing has gotten very much easier to do. San Antonio's done a really nice job on this. In fact, they just opened up a free walk-up clinic for anyone that has symptoms, and you don't get charged, and that's huge. That's really ahead of the time for Texas as a whole. And so that's really helping us track what we are having. We're also testing widely everybody in prison. I can get testing pretty easily for anybody coming into my hospital that needs admission. So I have the ability to test and test quickly, which is really, really helpful. Not everywhere is like that. And so I think I feel a little bit better about opening up here because we have that ability. Now, there's a lot of pop-up antibody testing where people say it's like a pinprick. That testing is not very good, and the reason is the FDA allowed a waiver of all these tests to come through where you didn't have to have it validated with them or the CDC or any of these governmental agencies that usually approve lab tests. They said emergency, you just have to show us your data that it's validated, and that's all you need. Well, that led through a lot of like tests that were not the best quality, specifically these antibody tests. And we're now seeing them crop up, and a lot of entrepreneurial people are taking advantage of people on this. People want to know if they're immune. The problem is the testing that most of you guys can get are not the testing that is FDA approved with the ELISA, which is a very specific test where they test for antibodies, and it's a complex test that has to be done in a full lab and it takes time. Those are the antibody tests that they're doing for like when people get plasma treatment with the convalescent antibodies, like when you've had COVID and you donate your antibodies and you treat someone else, the labs getting that plasma are testing it that way. The ones you can get with the pinprick, it's literally a drop of blood onto like, it looks like a rapid pregnancy test. And the problem with that is a lot of those are not validated, and they're finding that they are extremely unreliable. They can cross-react to other coronaviruses, including the common cold. And so it may say that you have an antibody, but you don't actually have the proper antibody. On top of that, we don't know if the antibodies are super protective, the ones that we're testing for. We have our suspicions, and I don't see why you wouldn't be with the way coronavirus is. However, we don't know. And so people are getting these, and I don't want people to be lulled into a false sense of security if you get an antibody test and then it says you're positive and think that you're okay to go around without a face mask around people, because that's defeating the purpose of us trying to keep from spreading this to other people. Because you may not be immune and you may not have had it. You may have just had the common cold. There was a news article about a big urgent care in New York that in fact tested like 1,500 people and failed to mention that those people weren't necessarily immune to the virus because their antibody test was positive. So there's a lot of this going on, and I want people to be mindful of that. I even had one of my relatives ask about that, and I had to break the news to her that that testing may or may not be helpful. The other thing is a lot of my colleagues around the nation and the world are taking these antibody tests and taking people that they know are positive. They have had positive COVID testing and testing them several times, and it's not great. A lot of them aren't popping up positive. Some of them are. And so that also is a question of how sensitive is our testing. And that is not great for that test. So I would not hang your hat on this antibody testing just yet. Hopefully we'll get better antibody testing, but we're not there yet on that. Treatments, there really hasn't been any new treatments coming out. If you guys are wondering, it's kind of the same thing. We're trying to avoid the vent, high flow oxygen. We're doing a lot more anticoagulation in folks because they're having a clotting type disorder. There were some interesting studies that came out recently about the micro clots that we're seeing, or pulmonary embolisms or clots all over the body. I was watching one doctor discuss about this, and they were looking at the autopsy data of a bunch of COVID patients, and they saw that there were all these little clots everywhere, the lungs and in the kidneys, but they also had heavy wet lungs like ARDS, which is acute respiratory distress syndrome. That's what we originally thought this virus caused in people. So they're getting this really weird mixed picture. They're also finding viral particles in the heart and the kidney and the liver and places like that. So this virus is invading into some of these tissues in these really sick folks. There are a slew of people that die from this that are popping up with antiphospholipid syndrome antibodies. This is a coagulopathy or clotting disorder that's real hard to diagnose. You often hear it tied with lupus, but I was trying to see if there was a link to lupus, and I'm not seeing it just yet. But it's lupus. People with lupus can have this as well. Basically, you create antibodies that cause you to make little microclots that can go into your veins and arteries and all over your body. And they're seeing a similar type presentation in these folks that get really, really sick. And so there may be some sort of genetic or predisposition that this virus is kicking off an autoimmune response, which is really interesting and terrifying all at once. So I am curious how that's going to show. That just complicates this picture so much more, because not only is this a respiratory virus, you see cough, congestion, or not so much congestion, cough, sore throat, fever, body aches, but it can also be a GI disorder. You can see nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. And now you get these little clots. So people can get things called COVID toes, where they get like a chilblain or almost like a frostbite looking foot, or little emboli or little clots in their toes, and they get gangrene in their extremities. They get pulmonary embolisms. People get clots in their brains and get strokes. People clot out and kill off their kidneys. So it is such a confusing disorder. And honestly, at this point, as an ER doctor, I just assume anybody who's walking through my door probably has COVID until proven otherwise. And that's been hard because it makes you on edge all the time. And now that we have visitors, I'm on edge too. So I wear an N95 most of the day, and that is very painful. It actually causes my nose to get really red and tender by the end of the day. My skin is breaking out like crazy. My face just hurts by the end of it, even like 6 hours of wearing this. If I do an 8 or a 12-hour shift, it's really, really painful. And my gut tells me places that are opening up in 2 to 3 weeks from when you open up, you're probably going to see a huge uptick in cases. So I, as a healthcare professional, am wearing extra protection until I see otherwise. So what I would say to folks, if you are needing to go out and about, and it's a personal decision for everybody, is please be smart. Please wear a face mask. Please do hand hygiene. Please stay 6 feet away from everyone. If a business, before you go to visit them, try to check out or call them ahead of time just to see what their policies and procedures are. A lot of these places, parks and stores, they have specific policies, and it's best to know them ahead of time so you're not frustrated, you're not exposing people, you're not exposing yourself. So for example, here in Texas, if I want to go to a state park, I need to reserve a pass online so that I can go in for that day because they're limiting it. There are some restaurants that you have to call ahead to put your reservation in to grab your food. You can't just walk up. So these are things to know, and please be patient with everybody out there. Just think of those poor folks that are having to go back to work, and be mindful of the fact that if you're in a store, if you're in a restaurant, if you can wear your mask, if you have no reason not to, like you're eating actively, you should wear your mask. Be respectful for those folks that are stuck in there, that are getting exposed over and over again. This is not about you. This is about everybody else. And that's what I think people need to remember. If we think about our fellow human beings, we'll get through this much, much better. So, yeah, that's about it. So if you guys have any questions, I think I'll have a better idea of how things are going next week. So I will update you guys then. But it's been pretty chill so far otherwise. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it stays that way. But thank you, everybody. I know a lot of people left me wonderful Mother Day greetings. That was really wonderful. I worked on Mother's Day, so when I got home, I just hung out with my family. And then like today, I went and did my social distancing, socializing with my mom from 6 foot away. But I appreciate everybody, and thank you so much for watching. And like I said, if you guys have any questions, leave them down below. I'll definitely try to answer them either at the time or in my next video. All right, guys, see you later, and bye.